My dear ones, if you're hearing my voice now, it means you are curious about my little story. And I do hope you stay with me until the very end, for nothing is ever quite as it seems in an old woman's life. Ah, Christmas! It has always been my favorite time of year, though I must admit, in recent years, the joy of it has soured. You see, when you've lived as long as I have, you begin to notice how quickly people forget the heart of the season, and instead, hunger only for what glitters, what costs, what can be paraded before others, as if to say, look at me, look what I was given. But my heart has never been about those things. My heart has always been about love, sacrifice, and memory. Yet, last Christmas, my family chose to mock me. They laughed, they sneered, they called me cheap, and all because of one small little gift. A gift that, unbeknownst to them, carried within it something far greater than any of their shallow hearts could ever imagine. Now, before I take you into that evening, I must tell you this. I am not a woman of weak emotions. I remember, I feel, and I endure. And so, I sat quietly in my old English house, the same one where my husband once filled the rooms with laughter, and my children used to dance around the pine tree in the parlor. The walls themselves still carry the warmth of those days, though to the eyes of others, this house is just a drafty, creaking relic from another century. Perhaps you can hear the wind whistling through the chimney even now, if you listen carefully. Many call this house eerie, but to me, it is alive. Alive with secrets, alive with promises, and alive with the things my family never bothered to ask me about. I had spent weeks preparing for Christmas. I cooked, I baked, I polished the silver that hadn't been used since my husband passed, and I set out the old family ornaments, each with its own memory. I thought, foolishly perhaps, that my children and grandchildren might appreciate the effort. But oh, how wrong I was! For when they arrived, their eyes roamed not with affection, but with judgment. They noticed the faded curtains, the worn rugs, the slight chill that no fire could ever quite chase away. I saw it in their smirks, the way they exchanged glances, as if they were counting the cracks in the plaster, rather than the love in the air. And then came the moment. The dreaded exchanging of gifts. I had been careful, deliberate. I chose small packages, wrapped simply but neatly. Each one held not luxury, but thought. And one of them held something that would alter everything. A little velvet box, no bigger than the palm of my hand. I placed it under the tree, nestled among the gaudy, oversized packages my children had brought for one another. They mocked my little box before even opening it. "Oh, mother," my daughter-in-law sneered, "always so quaint with your little trinkets. I do hope it's not another one of those knitted scarves." My grandson, who once adored me, laughed along. My heart cracked, but I said nothing. Because you see, when you know the end of the story, you can endure the cruelty of its beginning. But let me pause here a moment. My dear listener, if you are still with me, I ask you, would you have laughed at an old woman's gift? Or would you have waited, patient and kind, to see what truth lay inside? Tell me in the comments, because I truly wonder how many hearts still understand the meaning of giving. And while you're here, do subscribe, won't you? So you don't miss the rest of this tale, because it grows darker, more tangled, with every passing chapter. Now then, as they unwrapped their expensive gadgets and flashy perfumes, they tossed aside my gifts like scraps. One by one, they opened scarves I had knit with aching fingers, framed photographs of their childhood I had kept safe, little heirlooms from the attic polished until they shone. All dismissed, all mocked. My eldest son leaned over to his wife and whispered something that made her laugh until she nearly spilled her wine. They thought I didn't hear. But I hear everything in this house. This old place carries sound in strange ways. Their laughter echoed through the hall, as if the walls themselves were mocking me. And then came the little velvet box. My granddaughter, The youngest of them all picked it up with a giggle. "This one's so light, Granny. Did you forget to put something inside?" The others laughed with her, and in that moment, I felt something stir deep within me. A memory, a shadow, something I had buried long ago. I sat straighter, my eyes fixed on that box, and for a fleeting second, I swear the room grew colder. The fire sputtered, the candles flickered, and though no one else seemed to notice, I felt the presence of my late husband. He used to say this house would always protect me. I wondered, just then, if he was keeping his promise. The girl tore at the paper, the velvet revealed. She clicked open the box, expecting perhaps a brooch, a ring, some cheap trinket. What she found instead was a folded piece of parchment. Yellowed, yes, but neatly pressed. My family leaned in, frowning. "What's this?" she asked, handing it to her father. My son unfolded it, his face paling as his eyes scanned the words. I watched the color drain from his cheeks, the laughter die on his lips. "Is this what I think it is?" he whispered. His wife snatched it from his hands, read it, and gasped. My grandson leaned forward, his mouth hanging open. The room fell utterly silent, for in that little box, in that wrinkled old parchment, lay the deed to this very house, my mansion, as outsiders called it, the deed that held not only the house, but the lands around it, lands with value far greater than my children ever bothered to imagine. And all at once, their eyes changed, no longer mocking, no longer amused. They burned with greed, with hunger, with the ugliness that so often hides beneath a polite smile. But I wasn't finished yet. For you see, I had more secrets buried in this house, and more lessons to teach. They thought the deed was theirs now, theirs to fight over, to claim. But I knew the truth that would turn their greed into fear. Because this house, my dear listeners, this house does not belong to just anyone. It chooses, and it remembers. If you're still listening, thank you. You are the kind of soul who cherishes story and heart over riches. If you'd like me to continue, do let me know below and make sure you've subscribed. For what comes next is darker, more twisted, and I promise you, you won't forget it. I could almost taste the silence that fell over the parlor when they realized what that parchment truly was. Only moments before, their laughter had been cruel, echoing off the walls like knives. And now they sat frozen, their eyes wide, their mouths dry, as though they had glimpsed something forbidden. My son still held the deed in his trembling hands, his knuckles pale, and his wife clutched his arm so tightly I thought she might draw blood. My granddaughter, poor child, stared at me with a mixture of awe and confusion, her innocence not yet spoiled by the greed that infected the rest. My godmother, my eldest son, finally managed to speak, his voice a whisper. "This house, it's still yours. All of it," I thought. "Yes," I interrupted softly, letting my words float like smoke through the air. "You thought wrong." The fire cracked just then, a sharp snap that made everyone jump. I didn't move. I sat in my old chair, the one my husband had carved by hand, my fingers resting on its arms as though it were a throne. For in that moment, I felt a power stir within me. They had mocked me, belittled me, but here they were, suddenly reduced to frightened children by a single piece of parchment. My daughter-in-law, who had never once shown me kindness, leaned forward, her eyes glittering. "Mother, surely this means you've decided to give it to us, to pass it on at last. I mean, we could restore it, sell it, use the land, sell it." I snapped, sharper than I intended, and the room seemed to recoil. This house is not a trinket to be sold. This house has stood longer than you, longer than me, longer than even the memory of my grandmother. It has roots deeper than your understanding, and secrets you would never comprehend. Their faces shifted. Confusion mingled with unease. My grandson, who had laughed so loud at my knitted scarf only an hour ago, swallowed hard. What do you mean secrets? He asked. I let my gaze wander across the room, to the portraits that lined the walls. Generations of faces stared down from the shadows, stern, proud, watchful. Do you think I lived here all these years without learning what lies within its walls? I murmured. Do you think this house is only brick and timber? Oh no, my dears. It remembers. It keeps count, and it does not forgive mockery. The candles flickered again. The draft grew colder. My daughter clutched her cardigan closer around her shoulders and whispered, You're frightening us, Mother. I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. Am I? Or is it this house that frightens you? This house that listened as you mocked me? This house that holds every cruel word you've spoken under its roof? You think you've come here for presents and wine, but you've come to face something much greater. Ah, my dear listeners, if you could only see their faces, perhaps you can imagine them. Greedy eyes wide, lips quivering, the bravado drained from their bodies. Tell me, what would you have done in their place? Would you have continued mocking me? Or would you have begged forgiveness from the walls themselves? Leave me a comment, let me know, because sometimes I wonder if others can truly understand what unfolded that night. My eldest son cleared his throat, trying to muster courage. Mother, he said, surely you don't believe this. This nonsense. It's just a house. Old, crumbling, yes, but nothing more. At that, a sound came from deep within the house. Not the wind, not the fire, but something heavier. A groan, like the shifting of timbers. The floor beneath our feet trembled ever so slightly, enough to send their eyes darting around the room. I smiled, though my lips quivered with the weight of the truth I had carried for so long. Say what you like, I told them. But this house has already decided. It knows who will inherit, who will remain, and who will be cast out. That deed means nothing if the house does not accept you. They stared at me, aghast. My daughter-in-law scoffed, though her voice was shaky. You expect us to believe in fairy tales, that some cursed house chooses its owner. Ridiculous. I leaned back into my chair, folding my hands in my lap. Then stay the night, I whispered. Stay and see for yourselves. Their protests were loud, desperate. They had planned only to eat, drink, and flaunt their gifts, not to remain in my drafty old home. But greed is a powerful chain, stronger than fear. They wanted the house, the land, the wealth they had only just discovered. And so, one by one, they agreed to stay. Oh, my dear listener, can you feel the tension building? If you do, give this story a like, so I'll know you're walking beside me through these memories. It means more than you realize, having someone to share these moments with. As the night deepened, the house grew restless. Doors groaned, footsteps echoed where no one walked, and the cold crept in like an unwelcome guest. My children tried to laugh it off, to drown their unease in wine, but I saw their eyes darting to the shadows, their hands trembling as they lifted their glasses. At midnight, the clock in the hall chimed 12, a sound so deep, so resonant, that it shook the ornaments on the mantel. And with each chime, I watched their faces pale further. My husband had told me once that midnight was the hour when the house spoke loudest. And oh, how true that was. The moment the 12th chime faded, a sharp knock rang out from the far end of the corridor. Slow, heavy, knuckles rapping against wood. My daughter gasped, clutching her husband's arm. My grandson leapt to his feet. Who could that be? He stammered. But I already knew. You see, the house remembers. And when the clock strikes midnight, it calls forth those who once lived, those who still linger. My family thought me mad when I told them, years ago, that their grandfather still walked these halls. But now they would see. They would hear. Sit down, I told them firmly, my voice cutting through their panic. This is not for you to answer. This is for me. The knocking continued, louder, more insistent, and though my bones ached, I rose from my chair and began the slow walk down the corridor. My candle flickered, casting long shadows against the walls. The portraits watched me, their painted eyes glinting as though they knew what was about to unfold. Behind me, my family whispered, panicked, but I paid them no mind. My hand reached for the old oak door at the end of the hall, the one that had remained locked for decades. And when I touched the handle, the knocking ceased. Silence fell, so heavy it pressed against my chest. I turned back, and in the glow of the candlelight, I looked into my children's faces. They were pale, trembling, their earlier arrogance stripped away. "You wanted this house," I said softly. "Now you will learn what it means to hold it." And with that, I opened the door. The door swung open with a groan, so deep it seemed to rattle the marrow in my bones. My candlelight stretched across the threshold, spilling into a room my family had never seen. A room I had kept locked for longer than they had been alive. The air that rushed out was thick, stale, and colder than the night itself, as though the space had been holding its breath for decades. Behind me, my children gasped. My daughter-in-law hissed, "What is this place? Why have we never?" But her voice faltered, drowned by the weight of what lay beyond. Inside, the room was filled with relics. My husband's war trunk, untouched since the day he passed. Shelves of ledgers, diaries, maps of the land in faded ink, and portraits. Oh, so many portraits. Their frames heavy with dust. Their eyes alive with something more than paint. Some faces were kind, others stern, but all of them watched, always watching. I stepped inside, my candle flickering in the draught. "This," I whispered, "is the heart of the house, and it does not open for just anyone." My eldest son swallowed hard, his face pale. "Mother, what are you saying? What is all this? You've hidden this from us." I turned slowly to face them, the candlelight throwing my shadow toll across the walls. "Not hidden," I said. "Protected. This house has been ours for generations, but not everyone is fit to claim it. You thought my little gift was worthless, a mockery of your greed. But in truth, it was a test, and now the house itself will decide." They stared at me, horrified. My grandson, who had always been bold, took a step forward. "This is insane," he muttered. "It's just a house. Just bricks, timber, and old junk. We'll take it, fix it, sell it." The moment he spoke those words, the air shifted. A low hum began, vibrating through the floorboards, through the walls, as though the house itself had growled. The candle flame elongated, whipping back and forth, though no wind stirred. My grandson froze, his bravado collapsing in the weight of unseen eyes. "You will not sell it," I said, my voice firm and strange, as though something greater than me spoke through my lips. "This house knows who you are. It knows your scorn, your mockery, your greed, and it does not forgive." The portraits seemed to lean closer, their painted eyes gleaming with accusation. My daughter stumbled back, nearly tripping over the threshold. My son clutched the deed tighter, as if the paper alone could shield him. My dear listeners, I ask you, what would you do if your home began to breathe around you? If the walls pulsed with memory? If the shadows whispered your name? Tell me in the comments, for I wonder how many would have the courage to stay in that room. And if you've made it this far, bless you. Do subscribe, because what I am about to tell you next is not for the faint of heart. The hum grew louder, rising to a vibration that shook the glass panes in their frames. My candle sputtered and went out, plunging us into darkness. My family screamed, but I stood still, for I had known this moment would come. And then, the voice, it was deep, resonant, neither man nor woman, but something in between. It came not from the air, but from the very bones of the house. "Who mocks the giver?" it demanded. My daughter-in-law fell to her knees, sobbing. "It wasn't me. I didn't mean it." The voice rolled again, shaking dust from the rafters. "Who scorns the gift?" My grandson tried to bolt, but the door slammed shut behind him, locking us all inside. His fists pounded the wood, his cries filling the air, but there was no escape. Not now. I closed my eyes, tears welling. I had warned them, hadn't I? Hadn't I told them this house remembers? But they never listened. They never wanted to hear the old woman's stories. And now, the house itself demanded payment. My son, shaking, thrust the deed toward me. "Take it back," he cried. "We don't want it. Just take it." But the parchment burst into flame in his hands, consumed in an instant, leaving only ash that drifted to the floor. The house would not be bargained with. "Please," my daughter wailed, clinging to her husband. "Mother, make it stop. You're the matriarch. You can control it." I shook my head slowly, sorrow heavy in my chest. No one controls the house. We live within it, but it decides. And it has already seen your hearts. The portraits rattled on their hooks. The hum grew into a roar, and then silence. Thick, suffocating silence. And in that silence, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing across the room. My family pressed against the walls, their eyes darting in terror. The sound drew nearer, nearer, though no one could be seen. But I saw. Oh yes, I saw. My husband, my beloved, long since passed, walked through the shadows, his form faint but certain. He stopped at my side, placed his hand upon my shoulder. Cold as stone, yet familiar, comforting. "They mocked you," he whispered. "They mocked what you gave. The house will not allow it." My lips trembled. "Please, not the children," I begged. But he only shook his head. "The house has already chosen." The weight of his hand on my shoulder froze me in place. My husband, or the shadow of him, stood tall beside me, his eyes like smoke, his face neither living nor truly dead. My children whimpered, pressed against the far wall, as though distance could save them. But in this house, distance is an illusion. The house sees everything. "The house has chosen," he repeated, his voice echoing through the bones of the room. My grandson sobbed. "Chosen what? What does it want?" And then came the voice again, that dreadful, resonant voice, not from my husband but from the very walls themselves. "The ungrateful will be cast out. The mockers will be erased. Only the worthy shall remain." My daughter-in-law collapsed, screaming. My daughter clutched her husband's arm so tight her nails drew blood. My son sank to the floor, his pride shattered into terror. And me? I stood still, though my heart cracked in two. I had known this day would come, but I had prayed they would pass the test. "Mother!" My eldest son cried out, his voice trembling. "Please do something. You can stop this." I turned toward him, my tears glistening in the candle's last smoke. "No, my son, I cannot stop what you yourself summoned. When you mocked me, you mocked this house. When you laughed at my gift, you scorned generations. The deed was not a present. It was a measure of your souls, and you have been found wanting." The portraits on the walls began to tremble violently, their painted faces warping, stretching into grotesque sneers. My granddaughter screamed and buried her face in her hands, too young to understand, too innocent to deserve this. The house rumbled, the timbers groaning like a beast awakened from slumber, and then it began. The first was my daughter-in-law. She had been the loudest mocker, the cruelest with her words. The floor beneath her feet gave way, splintering like brittle bone. She shrieked as the boards cracked, and before anyone could grab her, she was swallowed by the darkness below. Her screams echoed as though she fell forever, until at last, silence. Only silence. My daughter wailed, clutching her husband. "What have you done, Mother? What have you done to us?" I shook my head, choking on my sobs. "Not I, the house," the voice thundered again. "The greedy shall not inherit." My eldest son, clutching his chest, cried out as the ashes of the deed lifted from the floor, swirling in the air like a storm. They circled him, burning, cutting his skin like paper turned to blades. He screamed, dropping to his knees, until the ash sank into his flesh and he collapsed, gasping, his eyes glassy. Alive, but broken. My grandson, who once adored me, pressed himself against the wall. "Please, Granny," he sobbed. "Please tell it I didn't mean it. I didn't mean to laugh." I stepped toward him, my hands trembling. "Oh, my sweet boy," I whispered. "You are cruel, but your heart is not yet hardened. The house may show mercy. If you listen." The air grew still. The portraits quieted. My husband's ghost turned to me, his eyes searching. "Mercy is rare," he said, "but perhaps not impossible." I knelt before my grandson, taking his shaking hands in mine. "You must choose now," I told him. "Stay and accept this house as your home, with all its burdens and its memories. Or leave and never return." His eyes darted toward the locked door, then back to me. "If I stay, will it spare me?" I nodded slowly. "If your heart is true, yes. But if you stay with greed, it will consume you," he sobbed, pressing his forehead to mine. "I'll stay, Granny. I'll stay. I promise." The house seemed to sigh then, the tension loosening, the air no longer suffocating. The shadows receded from him, sparing him, for now. But the others were not spared. My daughter, her face twisted in fear, screamed, "You're mad! All of you! I'm leaving!" She bolted for the door, wrenching at the handle. But the door flung open on its own, and beyond was not the corridor, not the familiar hall of my house, but endless black. She froze, teetering on the threshold. The blackness seemed to breathe, to pull. She shrieked, clawing at the frame, but the void swallowed her whole. And then the door slammed shut once more. The silence that followed was unbearable. Only 3 of us remained, myself, my broken son, and my trembling grandson. My husband's ghost stood tall, gazing at me. "The house is satisfied," he murmured. "For now." I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my cheeks. My family gone. Mockers cast out, greedy ones punished, only one spared, and all because they could not see the love behind a small gift. I turned to my grandson, who clung to me like a child. "You are the last," I whispered. "The house has chosen you, not because of your blood, but because you are willing to listen. Remember this, my dear. The mansion is not yours to own. It is yours to guard, to protect, to respect. If you fail, it will take you too." He nodded, trembling, his eyes wide with fear and awe. "I'll protect it, Granny. I swear it." I stroked his hair, my heart breaking and healing all at once. "Then the house will protect you in return." The fire roared back to life. The portraits stilled, their faces returning to paint and silence. The room warmed, the air softened, as though the storm had passed. My husband's ghost lingered for one last moment, his eyes meeting mine. "Well done," he whispered. "You have kept the promise." And then he was gone. I sat back in my chair, exhausted, my body trembling with the weight of what had passed. My grandson curled at my side, silent, watchful. The house had spoken. The house had chosen. And all I could do was pray he would honor its will. My dear listeners, if you've stayed with me until now, bless you. For this has not been an easy story to hear. But tell me, do you believe my family deserved what happened to them? Or should the house have shown them mercy? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you wish to know what became of my grandson, and what secrets still linger in this mansion, make sure you subscribe. For this story is far from over. The house was quiet again, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your skin, that makes you hear your own pulse in your ears. My grandson sat at my side, his small body trembling, his eyes darting to the corners of the room, as if shadows might reach for him at any moment. My son, broken but alive, still knelt on the floor, his chest heaving, his gaze blank. He had not spoken since the ashes had burned into his skin. Perhaps he never would again, The fire popped, sending sparks into the air, and I let out a long, weary breath. "It's over," I whispered, though even as I said it, I knew it was not. The house had calmed, yes, but the house never forgets. It had only quieted because it had judged. But judgments leave scars, and scars always ache in the cold. "Granny," my grandson whispered, his voice so small I almost didn't hear. Why does the house do this? Why does it hate us?" I turned my eyes to him, my heart breaking at the fear etched into his young face. "It doesn't hate us, my darling. Hate is too simple. This house, it remembers, it protects, it demands respect. When you mocked me tonight, when you laughed at my gift, it wasn't me you offended. It was everything this house stands for." He frowned, tears in his eyes. "But it's just a house." I shook my head slowly. "No, my dear, that's what your parents thought too. That's what made them blind. But you must learn what I learned when I was only a little girl, younger even than you are now. This house has a soul." He blinked at me, confused and frightened. My son stirred slightly at my words, but said nothing. Perhaps he was listening, perhaps not. But my grandson, he leaned closer, clinging to my hand, waiting for me to explain. "And so, I did. I grew up in this very house," I said softly, my voice carrying the weight of years. "It wasn't always so cold, so quiet. When I was a child, the halls rang with laughter, with music, with joy. My mother used to sing by the piano. My father would dance with her, and my brothers and I would chase each other through the corridors until we collapsed in heaps of giggles on the rugs. It was a happy home. Until one Christmas night, my grandson's eyes widened, and I could see him holding his breath, waiting. That year, I continued, my father's brother, your great-great-uncle, came to stay. He was a man of wealth and arrogance, and he looked down on us for choosing love over riches. My parents gave him a small gift, wrapped in the plainest paper, but inside was the key to this house. They wanted him to join our family, to share the warmth, to be part of us. But do you know what he did? My grandson shook his head. He laughed. I whispered. He mocked them, called them fools for offering him a drafty old ruin. He said the land would fetch a fortune, that he would sell it at once. He threw the key into the fire. The flames crackled then, as though remembering. My grandson clutched my arm tighter. That night, I said, my voice trembling, the house turned on him. Just as it turned tonight, he vanished, my darling, swallowed into the very walls. We never saw him again. My parents never spoke of it after, but I knew. I saw the shadows take him. I heard his cries echo long after he was gone. I paused, my breath heavy, my chest aching. From that night forward, I understood. The house is not stone and timber. It is memory. It is blood. It knows the worth of those who enter, and it spares only those who honor it. My grandson shivered, his eyes wide with terror. And now me? He whispered. It chose me? I nodded slowly, brushing his hair from his damp forehead. Yes, my sweet, you are the one. But do not mistake this for a prize. It is a burden. This house will protect you, but it will also test you. Always. You must never mock it, never sell it, never betray it. Do you understand? He swallowed hard and nodded, though I could see the weight of it pressed heavy upon him. My son finally stirred then, his voice hoarse and broken. Mother, he croaked, barely able to speak. Why didn't you warn us? Why didn't you tell us what this house truly is? I turned my weary eyes to him, my heart aching with sorrow. Would you have listened? I asked gently. All your life you dismissed my stories, called them foolish, called me senile. You never wanted to hear the truth. You wanted only the inheritance. And now you have seen the cost. He bowed his head, silent tears streaking his face. The fire dimmed then, as if the house itself wanted silence. The portraits seemed to settle back into their frames, their painted eyes dull once more. But I knew better. They were only waiting, watching, always. My darling listeners, I whispered, as though speaking not just to my grandson, but to all who sit with me now. Do you see what greed can do? Do you see how laughter, when cruel, can cut deeper than any blade? Tell me in the comments, do you think my family deserved their fate? Or should I have pleaded harder for them? I wonder, sometimes, if my silence damned them. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment, letting the exhaustion sweep over me. My grandson pressed himself against me, seeking comfort, and I wrapped my arms around him. The house had chosen him, but it had also bound me, for I knew, as surely as I knew my own name, that my story was not finished. The house was not done with us. Not yet. I looked into the fire, the flames low now, licking the blackened logs with tongues of dull red. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the faint whimper of my grandson against my shoulder. My son sat across from me, hollow-eyed, his hands raw where the ashes had bitten into his skin. He stared into nothing, though I knew his thoughts were screaming louder than any voice could. I felt the weight of decades pressing on my chest. How many years had I carried this burden alone? How many nights had I sat in this very room, listening to the house breathe around me, knowing it remembered, knowing it waited for the next test? And still I had chosen silence. Silence to protect them. Silence to protect myself. My dear, I said softly, running my fingers through my grandson's hair. There is more you must know, more than even your father has ever heard. The reason I hid the deed inside such a small gift, the reason I waited until this Christmas, is because the house told me to. My grandson pulled back, his eyes wide. Even my son shifted, his lips parting as if to argue, though no sound came. Yes, I whispered, my voice trembling. The house speaks in its way, not in words, not in voices, but in whispers in the walls, in dreams that come night after night. When I was younger, I thought I imagined it. I told myself it was grief, madness, loneliness. But the longer I lived here, the more I understood it was the house. It had chosen me long before I realized, and it had given me tasks, tests, demands. I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving the fire. For years it told me to wait, to bide my time, to watch my family, to choose wisely. And this Christmas, at last, it told me the time had come, that the heir must be revealed, that the deed must be passed on. My grandson's lip trembled. Why me? I cupped his cheek, my fingers trembling. Because you are pure, because your heart still listens. The house sees it. It has always seen it. You laughed tonight, yes, but only because you followed the others. In truth, you were the first to look guilty, the first to regret. The house knows. It always knows. He buried his face into my chest, and I held him close, though my own heart was breaking, for I knew what burden I had laid upon his small shoulders. My son finally found his voice then, rough and cracked. Mother, all these years, you let us believe you were poor. You let us mock you, think you foolish, while you sat here in this mansion. Why? Why hide it? Why let us hate you when you had power all along? I turned to him, tears stinging my eyes. Because you never loved me. Not truly. Not without condition. You loved only what you thought I could give you. And the house knew it. Had I given you the deed, had I passed this burden to you, you would have sold it by morning. You would have stripped its bones for gold. And then, my son, the house would not have taken you. It would have taken your children. It would have taken everything. He recoiled, shame and horror twisting his face. You think me so monstrous? I do not think, I whispered. I know, tonight proved it. When you mocked me, when you joined their laughter, you showed the house your heart, and it judged you. He bowed his head, sobbing quietly, his broken pride spilling into the ashes at his feet. The fire hissed then. As if satisfied, the portraits on the wall seemed to lean forward, listening. their painted eyes catching the dull light of the flames. And I felt it again, the house watching, always watching. My darling listeners, I murmured, my voice trembling, speaking now to those unseen souls beyond the walls of my memory. Tell me, if you were in my place, could you have stayed silent all these years? Could you have endured the sneers, the mocking, the loneliness, just to protect a house that no one else believed in? Leave me your thoughts, because sometimes I wonder if I was strong, or if I was simply a coward. I drew a deep breath, steadying myself. There is one more truth, I said at last, my eyes meeting my grandson's. One I have never spoken aloud, not even to myself. He looked up, his eyes shimmering with tears. My son lifted his head too, hollow and desperate. The house, I whispered, was not built by my family. It was taken. The words hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. My grandson frowned. My son's face twisted with confusion. Taken? My grandson asked. I nodded. 3 centuries ago, my ancestors claimed this land from those who lived here long before us. They built this house atop their graves. That is why it remembers. That is why it demands. Every stone, every beam is soaked with their sorrow. Their spirits linger, bound to the walls. That is why it chooses heirs, not to reward us, but to chain us, to keep us tied here, as they are tied. We are not masters of this house. We are prisoners of it. My grandson's small hands trembled against mine. My son let out a sound between a sob and a gasp, as though his very soul had been struck. I closed my eyes, my voice breaking. That is why the gift was small, because true gifts are not measured in size, or in glitter, or in gold. They are measured in weight, and this, my dear, is the heaviest gift of all. The fire sputtered. A low groan came from the beams above, as though the house itself approved of my confession. Shadows danced across the walls, faces forming in the dark, watching, always watching. I held my grandson close, pressing my cheek to his hair. You will inherit the deed, yes, but you will also inherit the voices, the whispers, the tests, and you must be strong, stronger than I was, stronger than your father could ever be. For if you fail, the house will not forgive. It never forgives. Silence fell again, deep and heavy, until the fire was little more than glowing embers. My son wept quietly. My grandson clung to me as though he would never let go. And I stared into the shadows, knowing they stared back. And for the first time in decades, I wondered if this Christmas gift had been salvation or a curse. The night did not end with the fire. I had hoped, foolishly, desperately, that once the laughter had died, once the judgment had been passed, the house would sleep. But the house never sleeps. It began with whispers, soft, so faint I thought at first it was only the wind through the old chimney. But no, it was clearer than the wind, closer, a voice that did not belong to any living soul. My grandson stirred in my arms, his small body stiffening, his head turning toward the sound. Do you hear it, Granny? He whispered, his voice trembling. I pressed my lips together. I had not wanted him to hear so soon. Yes, my darling, I hear it. The whispers came again, curling through the room like smoke, curling through the marrow of our bones. They spoke no words we could understand, only sounds, ancient, mournful, commanding. My son lifted his head, his eyes red, hollow, wild. What is that? He rasped. The house, I said simply. It has begun. My grandson clutched at me, his eyes wide with terror. Why me, Granny? Why do they call me? I kissed his forehead, my heart breaking. Because they see you now. They know who you are. They test what you are made of. The flames in the hearth flickered, then burned green for the briefest moment. My son let out a strangled gasp, stumbling backward, nearly falling against the rug. The portraits above us quivered in their frames, their painted faces warping, mouths opening in silent screams. And then, Silence. My grandson looked at me, tears streaming down his face. I can't do it, Granny. I can't stay here. Please don't make me. I held him tightly. Oh, my love, if I could carry this burden for you, I would. I have carried it all my life. But the house will not allow it. It has chosen. And you must listen, or it will take you as it took the others. His sobs broke me, each one cutting deeper than any blade. Yet still, I knew I had to be strong. My dear listeners, I whispered softly, my voice cracking. What would you do? Could you watch the child you love most be bound to a curse he does not deserve? Tell me in the comments if your heart would break as mine does tonight. The room darkened then, though no candle had gone out. The air grew heavy, suffocating, as though unseen eyes pressed close from every corner. My grandson stilled, his sobs silenced, his eyes glassy. Slowly, ever so slowly, he rose to his feet, his small hands slack at his sides. Child, I breathed, terror crawling through me. He turned his head toward me, but his eyes were not his own. They glowed faintly, as though the embers of the fire burned within them. His lips moved, and when he spoke, it was not his voice that came. Blood remembers. Blood obeys. My son let out a strangled cry. Mother, what is happening to him? I forced myself to stand, my body shaking, my knees threatening to give way. The test, I whispered. It is speaking through him. It is measuring his soul. My grandson's small body swayed. His head cocked unnaturally to one side. His voice, or rather, the voice that borrowed his mouth, echoed through the chamber. Will you betray? Will you mock? Will you sell what is not yours? Answer! The air grew colder. Frost began to creep along the edges of the window panes, crackling into the corners of the glass. My breath misted in front of me. My son stumbled forward, reaching for his child, but I threw out my hand, stopping him. No, I hissed. Do not interfere. The house will not forgive it. Let him answer. My grandson's glowing eyes turned toward me, and for one heart-shattering moment, I thought I saw the faces of the dead staring through him. The uncle who had vanished, the ancestors who had stolen the land, all of them crowding behind those innocent eyes. Then the boy's lips parted again, his own voice this time, thin and trembling. I will not betray, I will not sell, I will not mock, I will listen. The house groaned, a low thunderous sound that rattled the chandeliers, that shook dust from the rafters. The portraits shifted, settling once more into silence. The fire flared, then calmed, and the glow left my grandson's eyes. He collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Granny, Granny, I'm so scared. I held him, rocking him gently, my own tears finally breaking free. You are brave, my darling, braver than any who came before you. The house has seen your heart, and it has spared you. For now, my son sank to the floor, his face pale as death, his hands clawing into the rug. For now? He choked. What do you mean for now? I met his eyes, and for the first time, he seemed to truly see me, not as the frail old woman he had mocked, but as the prisoner I had been all my life. The house never stops testing, I said. It will come again and again, until the day it decides to take him. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream. The fire had calmed again, but the peace it offered was hollow, brittle, the sort of silence that could shatter at any second. My grandson lay trembling in my arms, his little chest heaving, his eyes still swollen with fear. My son sat hunched over, his hands buried in his face, silent tears dripping between his fingers. I should have felt relief. The boy had spoken true. He had resisted the first trial. But I knew better. One trial was never enough. The house was relentless. It would probe deeper, gnaw harder, until it found the marrow of his soul. And sure enough, before long, the air grew heavy again. It started with a faint creak above us, as if footsteps walked the rafters. Then a slow scratching, like nails dragging across the walls. My grandson stiffened, clutching at my sleeve. "Granny," he whispered, "they're coming back." "Yes, my love," I murmured, stroking his hair. "Do not be afraid. Remember what I told you. The house always tests, but it only destroys if you give it reason." But my words trembled on my tongue, for I knew this test would not be so simple. The scratching grew louder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Then, without warning, the great oak door of the parlor swung open with a thunderous crack. The hallway beyond was pitch black, though every lamp had been lit earlier. Out of that darkness stepped a figure. It was him, my late husband. My breath caught in my throat. My son staggered upright, his face twisted with horror. My grandson whimpered, burying his face in my chest. But the figure was wrong. His smile was too wide, his eyes too dark, his steps too smooth. This was not my husband. This was the house wearing his face, Elizabeth. It crooned, my name, in a voice so chillingly familiar, I felt my knees weaken. "You kept me waiting all these years." I bit down hard on my lip, tasting blood. "Do not answer it," I whispered to my grandson. "No matter what it says, do not answer." The figure stepped closer, its shadow stretching long across the rug. Its gaze fixed on the boy. "My boy," it said warmly, cruelly. "You needn't be afraid. You needn't suffer as your grandmother did. All you must do is give me the deed. One small slip of paper, and you will be free. No more whispers. No more cold nights. No more fear." My son stumbled forward, his face contorted. "Don't listen," he cried. "It's a lie." The figure turned its black eyes upon him, and he fell silent, choking as though unseen hands gripped his throat. He sank to his knees, gasping, clawing at his neck. The boy shook, trembling so violently, I thought his small bones would shatter. "Granny," he sobbed, "I don't want it anymore. I don't want the house. Please take it back." My heart broke with every word, but I held him tight, forcing my voice to remain steady. "You cannot give it back, my love. That is what it wants. That is what it always wants. To break the chain, to be sold, to be freed. But if you give it away, it will not set you free. It will devour you." The figure tilted its head, smiling wider. "Lies, child. Do you think she has told you the truth? She has chained you, as she was chained. I offer you release. One word, one promise, and you will never hear my voice again." The boy shook his head violently, sobbing. "No, no, I won't." The figure's smile faded. Its shadow grew darker, stretching across the floor like a pool of ink. The fire hissed and shrank. The portraits on the wall twisted in silent agony, and the floorboards groaned underfoot, as though the house itself leaned closer, listening for his answer. My grandson clung to me, his tears soaking my dress. "Granny, I'm scared. I can't do it. I can't." I kissed the crown of his head, my own tears spilling now. "You can, my darling. You are stronger than I ever was. Do not give in." The figure leaned down, its hollow eyes inches from the boy's face. "Choose," it hissed. And then to my horror, the boy whispered, "Yes." The world seemed to shatter. The fire roared. The portraits screamed. The windows shattered inward, spraying glass across the room. My son cried out, shielding his face. The figure's smile split wider, its shadow rising like smoke. I grabbed my grandson by the shoulders, forcing him to look at me. "No, no, listen to me. The word is not binding until you give it your heart. You can still resist. Tell it no, say it now." He sobbed, shaking violently, his lips trembling. The figure's shadow reached for him, curling around his small body like chains. "Say it." I screamed, my voice breaking. "Say no." At last, from deep within his chest, a cry tore free. "No!" The shadow recoiled as if struck. The figure let out a roar that rattled the rafters, its false face twisting into something monstrous, eyeless, mouth gaping. It shrieked once, a sound that split the very air, and then it was gone. Silence crashed down, thicker than before. The fire burned steady once more. The door swung shut with a slam that echoed into the marrow of my bones. My grandson collapsed against me, unconscious but alive. My son gasped on the floor, his hands pressed to his chest, his body shaking, and I sat in the ashes of what remained, my heart shattering into pieces. For the boy had said yes. Even if he had taken it back, the house had heard. The seed was planted. My dear listeners, I whispered hoarsely, staring into the empty air as tears blurred my sight. Do you think he is strong enough to survive what is coming? Or has the house already claimed him with one small word? And in the silence that followed, I knew the answer was already written. The house never forgets. The house had gone quiet again. Too quiet. That silence I dreaded. The silence that did not soothe, but threatened. I sat by the dying fire, my grandson's frail body limp against me, his breath shallow but steady. My son crouched near the wall, broken, trembling, his eyes fixed on the floor as if he no longer dared look at me or at the house. But I knew it was not finished. The house never finished with just 2 trials. The third always came, and the third was always the cruelest. I closed my eyes, whispering into the darkness, "Please, not him, not the boy. Take me instead. I am old, worn, ready. Leave him be." For a moment there was only the crackle of ash. Then came a low rumble, deeper than thunder, a sound that rose from the very stones beneath our feet. The chandeliers rattled, dust fell from the rafters, and the walls began to tremble. My grandson stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Granny," he whispered weakly. I kissed his brow. "Hush, my darling. Stay still. Whatever happens, do not move." The rumbling deepened, and with a sickening groan, the hearth split down the middle. The flames snuffed out in a hiss of smoke. From the crack in the floor spilled a black mist, curling like fingers through the room. My son cried out, scrambling back, his face pale as bone, and then the voice. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, from within my very chest, a chorus of the dead, whispering and screaming as one. "You carried the silence. You fed the curse. You bound him to us." I froze, my blood turning to ice. You mocked no gift, but you gave no warning. You let greed fester. You let laughter wound. You are guilty. The shadows surged, crawling across the floor toward me, toward the boy. My arms tightened around him. "No!" I cried, my voice breaking. Take me instead." The chorus wailed, rattling the glass in the windows. "A price must be paid," I sobbed, rocking my grandson in my arms. "Then take my life, take my soul, take everything I have. Only spare him." The shadows froze. The silence pressed in like a hand on my throat. And then laughter, not mocking, not cruel, but hollow, endless. The laughter of the dead. "Would you give yourself? Would you carry what you denied?" "Yes," I screamed, my voice shattering in the vast room. "Yes, I will. Spare him and bind me instead." The shadows rose higher, wrapping around me like chains, icy cold against my skin. My grandson cried out, clutching at me. "No, Granny, don't leave me. Please don't leave me." Tears streamed down my face as I kissed his hair. "I will never leave you, my darling. Even if you cannot see me, I will be here. In the walls, in the fire, in the whisper of the house. Always." The black mist tightened, pulling me backward, lifting me from the chair. My son reached for me, screaming, but the shadows threw him aside like a rag. My grandson clung to my hand until the very last second, until the cold pried his fingers away. And then I was gone. The world dissolved into darkness, into endless halls lined with faces I knew and faces I did not. Ancestors, strangers, enemies, all bound to the house, all watching me with hollow eyes, and I understood. This was the final truth. The mansion had never been mine. I had never owned it. None of us ever had. We were its servants, its prisoners, its sacrifices. And now I was one of them. My dear listeners, I whispered into the void, my voice breaking as tears slipped down a face, no longer my own. This is the price of silence. This is the cost of greed. Tell me, would you have made the same choice? Would you give yourself for the child you love? Or would you let the house take him? Leave me your thoughts. For though I am gone, I am still listening. The shadows closed in, and the last thing I heard was the sound of my grandson's sobs, echoing through the mansion, binding me forever to its walls. When the shadows dragged me into the dark, I thought I had vanished forever, but I was wrong. I was not gone. I was changed. The walls breathed, the chandeliers swayed, though no wind touched them. The fireless hearth glowed faintly red, like embers deep in a pit, and I could feel myself in all of it. I was the creak of the floorboards, the whisper in the curtains, the pulse beneath the stones. My son staggered up from the floor, blood streaking his face. From where he had struck the wall, his eyes darted about the room, wild, searching. "Mother," he croaked, his voice broken. "Mother!" But it was my grandson who shattered me. He crawled across the rug, his small fingers clutching at the empty air where I had been, sobbing so hard it tore at the marrow of my soul. "Granny, don't go! Don't leave me here!" I tried to speak, to comfort him, but my voice came only as a whisper in the crackle of the walls. "I am here, my darling, always here." His head snapped up, his wet eyes darted around wide. "Granny, was that you?" "Yes," I breathed, the house carrying my words like a draft. "I kept my promise. I will never leave you." My son fell to his knees, burying his face in his hands. What have I done? Dear God, what have I done? The fire in the hearth roared to life suddenly, high and wild, casting monstrous shadows on the walls. My reflection wavered in the flames. Not the old woman I had been, but a pale, hollow-eyed phantom, my face carved in sorrow. The voice of the house rose again, deeper now, surrounding us like a sea. The debt is paid. For now, my grandson clutched my son's arm, trembling. What do they mean? For now. The walls shuddered. The chandelier rattled. My ghostly reflection turned its gaze upon them both. No curse ends with one life. It feeds. It waits. It demands again. My son looked up, his eyes red and wild. "Then take me!" he shouted into the flames. "Take me now. Spare my boy." The house laughed. A low, endless laugh that seemed to shake the very ground. "Not yet," it whispered. "You will live with what you have seen. You will raise him in the shadow of what you lost. And when the time comes, the child will choose." "No!" I screamed, the walls cracking with my voice. "Not him. Leave him be." But the fire dimmed, the laughter fading into silence. The judgment was done. My grandson sobbed into his father's chest, and for a long time the only sound was his weeping. My son held him, broken, whispering apologies over and over, and I could do nothing but watch. The night dragged on. At some point, exhaustion pulled the boy into a fitful sleep. My son sat by the coal fire, staring at nothing, his eyes hollow. Finally, he whispered into the darkness, "Mother, if you can hear me, I will not fail him again. I swear it. I will raise him away from this place. I will never let greed blind me again. I will not let your sacrifice be wasted." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to hope. But the house was inside me now, and I could feel its hunger. It was patient, endless, eternal. My sacrifice had bought only time. My dear listeners, I whispered through the walls, through the broken glass, through the ashes of the fire. Do you see now? Do you see how curses cling, how silence binds? how greed poisons even the purest love. Tell me, would you have done the same? Would you have given yourself to save the child? Even knowing the curse will one day return. Leave me your thoughts in the comments, for I will read them still, though my eyes no longer belong to me. The house groaned around me, its timbers settling. The night swallowed the last of the flames. And in that vast, eternal silence, I knew the truth. I was the mansion now, and I was waiting.